It is the intention of the police to only use these powers to achieve one goal, and that is to incarcerate for as long as is legally possible all the criminal gang elements from the specified areas who make criminal behavior their way of life, who prey upon innocent citizens and their properties, and who engage in violence against each other, which also puts innocent persons in harm's way.
And welcome back. And we do want to say that that is a clip that was provided by our guest, Audrey Matura, who is here as an attorney speaking on her legal perspective on the state of emergency in two Southside areas in Belize City. Good morning, Audrey. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And that clip was necessary because one of the things that I've been saying, I think I need to make it very clear. One, we do accept that there is a crime problem. There's been for a while. When we first put the military on the street, which was in 2 decades ago, it never worked. It still has not worked. It shows that we have escalated to the point where we are today. 2, that while the minister says that their intention is to incarcerate people for as long as legally possible, using the Constitution to do it is an abuse, because now it shows that their sole purpose was only to ensure that they have preventative detention when there are other laws that could have gone and have a better effect, because it wouldn't have been just to incarcerate without charges. There would have been to incarcerate with charges. And 3, I want to say, now that I've gotten a copy of the regulations, I see that there's total abuse, and I hope we will have time to go through the regulations, because although it was gazetted Friday, it was never released publicly. So I've had to hunt it down and finally got a copy, which I think was wrong, that they should have published those regulations when they made the declaration, and they should have immediately given it to the media so that we can go and properly have a discussion.
Can I jump in there? Because actually this is following up on a conversation we had with Dickie Bradley as well on the legal perspective. He was concerned that there were no regulations published. Does the law say it must be publicized for everybody to be able to know and see?
Yes, it has to be gazetted.
Okay.
And that is the way that it becomes public. So,
so has it been gazetted?
Well, I can't say it has been gazetted, but I got a copy of it. And so I'm assuming that, yes, it has to have been gazetted. I don't know. I got this copy from Print Belize. Yeah. It's dated the 11th, I mean the 7th, sorry. And it's signed by the Governor General. Okay. So, but we know it wasn't on the 4th when the proclamation was made.
So the SI was signed on the 4th. The regulations signed on the 7th.
On the 7th.
And the regulations are important because while the state of emergency suspends the constitutional rights, certain constitutional rights, these are the guidelines. These are limitations as to what you can and cannot do.
I thought it would have been the limitations, but it is worse than the actual legislation. And what is concerning about it is that now under the regulations, the things that they could not do under the Constitution, they've expanded their powers, which is illegal. So let me make it very clear. Under the Constitution, they declared an area, not a category of people, an area. So these 2 zones, I call it Mayflower and George Street, but we know it expands to beyond those streets. Yeah. But listen to this part of the regulation, how it has expanded beyond the regulation, the Constitution. Under Regulation 13, it says the powers exercisable under these regulations during the emergency period in respect of a person who could have been arrested or detained in the emergency area, but who has fled the emergency area, or in respect of a person who was arrested or detained in the emergency area but has absconded, shall be exercisable in respect of that person wherever in Belize that person is arrested or detained, as if the person were located in the emergency area at the time of arrest or detention. That is crazy, because I made it clear that when I read that declaration, they were saying this area. This is the area. Yeah. So if you were not in this area, this rule couldn't apply. That was one of the questions I kept asking when I kept running. Let me see where the regulations are, what they have done. So even if you may have lived in this area, or they think you have lived in this area and you live somewhere else, but they think that that's where you would have been, they then, no matter where you are, they're saying the same regulation and plan. That I say that's illegal. The Constitution did not envision that.
So if I am assumed to be an associate of Mayflower, George Street, and I am living or visiting or staying in Shaibe,
yes,
I can be detained
yes,
from the place I
Right.
am in Shaibe.
Right. So then it no longer applies to your zone, but rather it applies to you, a profile person. And the regulations goes further. To me, this part is very dangerous. It says, for the purpose of subregulation 1, the minister may declare the person to be a person of special national security interest. So it's the minister now who decides that you're of national security interest. So let's say Kevin lives in that area, and Kevin has been very vocal, and they claim, well, oh, Kevin has been having clients that are criminals, whatever, and they say, well, we declare him a person of special national security interest. There's nothing we can do to say that Kevin cannot be taken, which is wrong now, because it goes beyond what was said. They gave this declaration on the premise that the proclamation was necessary because you are a danger to public safety. They're not saying that they see you as a danger to public safety. They're saying you just became of national security interest, which is different. There's a difference in it.
And for context as well, and I have to declare that I wear several hats, and it's difficult for me to take off the human rights hat and put on the host hat, which I will do today. But that in the Constitution, as you were pointing out, the minister doesn't have that power any at all.
No.
That is reserved to the
Governor General
and to the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
But how does that work legally if the Governor General signs a regulation giving the minister the power? Is that allowed for?
Well, I would go as far as saying, in my opinion, it doesn't. Because of the nature of the power, it has to be that the way it is written, it was the Governor General who should make the regulations to determine certain limitations. He could not give that power. He cannot delegate that power to the minister. The reason why the minister is a political figure as opposed to the Governor General, who stands in the place of the Queen, because that's the system we have, who is then should be a head of state that doesn't take political sides. If you see the Queen in England, she doesn't make political comments. So you give it to a seemingly neutral person. But I don't know who has been advising them, because in my view, it is clear that you cannot leave that subjective decision to the minister. It's not even to a panel, it's not even to a group of people, it's just the minister. However, what this regulation did, which goes to the question at Regulation 18, that's exactly what they did. Here, regulation says, the minister, it doesn't say the Governor General empowers the minister to do X, Y, and Z. It says the minister, if satisfied that a person has been concerned in acts prejudicial to public safety or public order, including an offense under the Crime, Control, and Criminal Justice Act, or in the preparation of or instigation of such acts, and that for any reason thereof it is necessary to exercise control over that person, he may make an order to be known as a detention order against any person directing that he be detained. Okay, so let me break that down. What is basically saying, look, Minister, you have the discretion. If you think these people are a danger to public order and public safety, or has committed an offense under in the Crime Control and Criminal Justice Act, then you make a detention order, which is wrong. Why do I say it's wrong? Because the crime, if you really believe that they committed an offense, not suspected of, that they have committed an offense under this act requires then that you take the person, you arrest them, you charge them, you arraign them, you remand them, and then you take and prosecute them. So if you really,
due process.
If you really believe that they committed an offense, then you have to apply what the law says. They're mixing both of them. I really don't know who's advising them, but this is totally wrong and misconceived. And because people are so happy, they say, oh, do what they want, and then they're the criminals, they don't realize the extent of power they're giving up, and they do not realize the extent of the precedent they are setting, and that your constitution is not something that you tamper with easily. And that's the danger.
You have likened this state of emergency to going back to the widely opposed preventative detention and saying that essentially it's just different wording, same actions.
Yes. Let me explain. The reason I wanted that clip to be played, you heard what the minister said, that there was only one goal and one sole purpose why they used the constitutional declaration. It was to ensure the incarceration of these guys. It wasn't to ensure that there was due process, that there were conviction, and that they can remain incarcerated properly. This incarceration is worse than a Band-Aid. This is like when you get bruised up and your mother just give it one. He kiss and say, "No worry, I get better," but you don't get better because your hand's still sprained and your bones broke up. At least a Band-Aid will hold something together. This is worse than that. And the reason it's worse than that is that here you have laws targeting gangs. It doesn't matter where in the country they are. It doesn't have to be a special zone. Once you believe they're gangs and you are gang affiliated and you or they have committed a crime, here you have a way of properly prosecuting them and ensuring that they're incarcerated. After 30 days, what will happen? There has to be a panel and a review. And if the National Assembly passes it for another 2 months and up to 12 months, are you solving the problem when it comes to that aspect of prosecution? My simple answer to that is no, you're not solving the problem. You're creating a bigger problem. Let me tell you how far I'm concerned. I'm concerned that yesterday I got to go visit some of the guys before they were sent up to Hattieville and listen to, and this was on the news. So this is what they call the detention order now, that under Section 18 that was made by the minister, it's signed by him. But here what it says. It says that, it reads the same exact word as Section 18, so I won't repeat that, but this is what it says. In furtherance of paragraph 2, which repeats Section 18 of the regulation, the acts prejudicial to public safety and public order with which you, Mr. X, Y, and Z is concerned are more specifically, 1, that you're involved in gang activities, 2, that you are you're in illegal possession of firearms and ammunition, 3, you've been involved in shootings, and 4, you're involved in drug trafficking. Okay, what happened? The law says, the Constitution at Section 19, subsection 1 says that after 7 days, if you want to keep these people detained, you need to tell them why they're detained. You need to go tell them, and then you need to give them a written document saying, here are the particulars. Yesterday, not one person was verbally told by anyone why they're detained, except the 2 minors, because I was present and I demanded that they follow the procedure. The other guys, somebody just came and gave them a paper, the detention paper.
But that fulfills the obligation of the 7 days?
No. It has to be 2 things. You have to be told and explained,
okay,
and then you have to be given something in writing.
Okay.
But let me get to a particular point. When they were given this in writing, what they're saying is, we know you're involved in gang activities. Even then, if you know you're involved in gang activities, you don't have to incarcerate them for 30 days. You can convict them and incarcerate them for 25 years. It's here. Just this year. This is gazetted the 11th of April 2018. They just passed this law. And I like to read what's there so that people know I'm not talking off the top of my head. Here is the law. Here what it says. It tells you who is a gang leader. It's a person who is a gang member or in order to gain unlawful benefit profess to be a gang member when in fact he is not. So you could be one or you could pretend you're one because you want have some clout to get some benefit. Commits an offense by virtue of being such a member as the case may be. Or by professing it, it's an offense. And on summary conviction, they can be imprisoned for a term not exceeding 10 years. And on subsequent conviction on indictment to imprisonment to a term not exceeding 25 years. So let's pause here. If these officers, these police officers really believe these guys are gang members, it's easy to prove it. Mr. Chester Williams, the Prime Minister, the various ministers of national security, Ms. Diane Finnegan, Mr. Noor Mohammed, and a few others have gone and sat in meetings with these people claiming that they're doing a gang truce. The law just requires for you to say that we know they are gang members or that they have professed to be gang members, even if they're not. You all have covered in the media, the meetings,
or contributing
the
to
meetings.
gang activity.
Audrey, what
No.
What are you suggesting that the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security become witnesses?
Well, you can't want to abuse the Constitution and not bring the evidence. You want to lock them up for 10 years or 25 years? You pass the law. And the media, the recordings are there. Haven't you all gone to these truce meetings, recorded them, their interviews? Haven't they sat there? How did the Prime Minister pass that legislation wherein they were helping gang members, giving them jobs or financing them monthly with some kind of money? That I'm not making that up. You all have reported it in the media. The Prime Minister even gave a presentation in the National Assembly where he said he was going to help a few gang members because they have convinced him that they want to get out of a life of crime. We don't need to trample on everyone's rights. You see, people think you're protecting criminals' rights. No, we all have rights. In trying to go after these criminals, we're being taken for kunomono because our own authorities know who they are. Mr. Williams said in the press conference that he knew every shot or every bullet shot or something like that, and that he knows all of them and that they've been committing extortion. And he has even caught 2 of them, talked to them after a murder and released them, and then after that was murder. That's all you needed to know. They can give evidence. Police have always given evidence. We are being taken for fools.
Well, and I think a part of it is that we have short-term memories about things, and I want to go back to the very same legislation that you spoke of. It was in March, ending March into April, that there were 11 murders in one weekend.
Right.
There was an immediate reaction by the government of this country. The Prime Minister held a press conference on a Sunday afternoon. Usually we wait for business days to do things. That was when this
law
enhanced, we call it the gang law, which means it criminalized and gave graver punishments to any gang-related activities, was introduced and would be passed.
That's the crime control.
It is, but we call it the
They call it the gang law, but it is the Crime Control and Criminal Justice Act.
At that time, there was also the introduction of the concept of the state of emergency. However, they decided at that time they would proceed with this law to use as a way to calm down what was happening in the streets, and then if that would not work, then the state of emergency would be implemented.
But Marlene, they haven't even arrested and charged anyone under this law. So the reason I read that first particular why they're being held is because if you believe that they are gang members, you can't off the cuff of your head say, I think they're gang members. You have to have some basis, but that's sufficient for the authorities. And I listed police, no, they were in those meetings. Even after those meetings, they've been meeting with these guys. They know who they are. They can implement this law. And when you ask me if I'm suggesting there should be witness, well, yes. They expect us, the average people, to be witness. They're not above the law. Of course, the government officials and the politicians can be witnesses. And I dare challenge them to do it since they're so serious about crime. You've been sitting with the so-called gangsters. Give the evidence that they have admitted. And let me say, not one of those leaders, when they went to those meetings, had a non-disclosure agreement signed. So it's not as if they went to those meetings and there are non-disclosure agreements where the government cannot use it against them. That would have made a difference. And we are dealing with lawyers. Our Prime Minister is a lawyer. And a lot of them are other lawyers. And now we have lawyers in the police. So they must know the importance of documenting and the importance of when you do non-disclosure and non-prosecution documents. But the non-prosecution, only the DPP could do that. And she was never invited to those meetings, thank God, because then she would not be able to prosecute them. The thing is, my problem is that there are all these laws, right? And there are those people who quickly go on Facebook and attack and say, oh, they're with Chester and they're with, get them rid of them. But they are saying things without knowing what the laws are. They have not taken, they have not taken time to read it.
Under the updated regulations?
No, I don't know of anyone. Had it happened, it would have been big news because they would have held a press conference and boasted about the same way they display all the guns that they go pick up at some empty lot. Instead of waiting and do surveillance to see who will go pick up the guns, they go and pick up the guns.
But
you know?
And actually, you know the real story behind that. There's no found property. It is what I call police extortion.
It is
they
police
arrest you
extortion.
For something smaller. They ask you to snitch or have your boss give up guns or drugs and they put in an empty lot and then they go afterwards. We had somebody who was actually prosecuted after they did that.
Yeah.
But my question is this. Going right back to what you were saying. There are lots of people in Belize, right-minded people, who some people insultingly say wanted to jump up for Juve, and are very happy that it worked. The state of emergency worked. There's only been 2 murders, and Belizeans, for the most part, feel, law-abiding citizens feel emboldened, and the criminals are on the run. So it looks as though the good guys are winning, and that they only are winning because we went to a state of emergency. And that you as an attorney are going to be today arguing on behalf of what you're doing wrong, but tomorrow be arguing to set these criminals and these terrorists and gang members free the following day.
That is not true. And I understand that that's the sentiment some people have, but that's simply because of lack of knowledge and because they're not close enough to the situation. If people would understand our legal system and if people would understand the laws in place, they would then realize that there are other permanent, more reasonable solutions that would put them away. When you lock up a man for 30 days or more with no evidence, with nothing, you're creating a monster. But when you lock up a man based on evidence, no, okay, if they go and say not guilty, no, they still have an ability to reason and they have a conscience. They know you to catch them by evidence. And they say like, boy, then catch me, but then catch me. But that's a different thing, and I've had to deal with this when I was a prosecutor. When they catch you, and then you find out that it's concocted evidence. What you've created there is an upset man. Although you convict them with good evidence, whether they like it or not, they have to say, well, you know what, I was fairly convicted. The difference is the fairness in it. It's one thing to be convicted knowing that the evidence was concocted, so you're resentful, as opposed to being, okay, we will say you know you got convicted to your heart based on evidence. But I'll go a step further. Those same law-abiding citizens who believe that this is good, they're having double standards, Kevin. And I'll tell you why they're having double standards. So here, the police come out and the authorities come out and say, these are gang members, and these are the people committing all the crimes, and these are X, Y, and Z. But they don't stop and think that some of those same gang members are the ones who have campaigned for these politicians, are the ones who go and deliver the monies when it comes to pay people for election. These are the same gang members that are enforcing some of the policies of the same politicians. These same gang members are the same people that some of the ministers don't walk their area, but pay their light bills and different things and maintain their children. They're not seeing that correlation. So they go after them because the murder of someone is visible. But we have other criminals higher than these criminals, and those are the people in government, the ones who sell our passport, the ones who give our visas illegally. We had all the evidence against Penner, and imagine a civilian had to bring a case against a commissioner to arrest him, but they didn't. He never got arrested and prosecuted. Have you seen Mr. Vega get arrested and prosecuted for anything with those land deals? No. No. Those are gang members, organized people who extort the society. They're just the rich ones and the ones in powers. So the hypocrisy of it is that while we may see body count in terms of physical body count, those same corruption that deprive us of the services to uplift our people, those are the worst gang members, because those gang members are the ones who create the trickle-down effect of the poverty and the crime on the streets. And those are the same gang members who know of the planes that are landing, that it's bringing in the drugs and bringing in the guns. So let's not be stupid here. I will not have anyone pull the wool over my eye until our Belizean people can connect the dots. So with the same fervor you are saying, lock them up for 30 days, how come we can't get people to walk the street and protest and have all those ministers? Look at the story the other day with Boots Martinez. Have you seen, and see, these people are only being picked up because they suspect there's no evidence. We've had ministers, you all have reported it in the news, you've shown the documents, you have seen what the ministers have done. How come, no, I don't want the double standards. How come we're not, how we're not clamoring?
Can I say that?
How we're not clamoring? It's unfair.
Can I say that what is my respondent say, Audrey, those people are referring to, that's a political attack. What we're dealing with here is criminals who are on the streets.
This is a political attack too. But no.
So it's two different things. You're talking politics.
No. Kevin, you're wrong there.
I'm telling you what somebody looking at the television
they can say that, but you're wrong there. You're wrong there. Because at the end of the day, they control the resources of all of us. And because they're in power...
They're not killing anybody, though.
They're not killing anybody. Who said? There's a difference. Yes, there's a slow killing. There's the killing of the future of our children. There's the killing of the ability of people to have basic resources so that they can uplift themselves, so that they can challenge the same policies of these leaders. If you've noticed what we've done, we've marginalized people. We've kept them with a little bit of handout, so they don't want independent thinking-minded people. And even people with degrees and education, because now they're politically appointed, they keep quiet and they go on rampage attacking, but they don't want to. A society cannot develop unless people are prepared to critically think and say, no, let us call a spade a spade. Now, and that's not happening. There's a double standard here.
I hear what you're saying in terms of the issues of corruption. And again, I think one of the things that we have to be very cognizant of is how we prioritize things in this country. And unfortunately...
But they're linked, Marlene.
No, I'm not saying they're not linked. Of course. There are enough studies that say that when you have corruption at the top, you start to see some of the things that we're seeing
And you break down institutions. We don't have institutions that hold governments accountable.
But just to get this point in, when your personal safety feels affected, maybe not literally. I could live in Bonwood Bay and not be in a gang area, but I don't feel that personal safety becomes paramount beyond any other issue.
Right.
And that is where we are with the murders we've been seeing, and the violent crimes and the home invasions and
Right.
everything else.
I
So
agree
that
with you.
becomes priority for
And
people.
so you
it's
react.
Exactly.
You become reactionary.
So
Instead
now-
of having been involved all along
Yeah.
to ensure accountability so that our resources are equitably distributed and so that those same people who we want to convict, we have make sure that the police have all the resources to do the surveillance and get the proper conviction so that the office of the DPP can have all the manpower they need to ensure that they convict these people. So that the legal department, the Supreme Court or the judiciary have enough judges and enough courtrooms. There's a backlog, and the longer you take to convict, justice delay is justice denied. And there's another misconception that we are only protecting the rights of criminals. The state is bigger than these criminal elements. It should be, right? When someone is murdered, they say, so how the attorney know they protect their rights? Do you know why? It's the state. People don't understand our legal system. When it's a criminal matter, the state steps in to protect your rights. And then the criminal is left on his own, and they have to find their own defense. And if it's murder, only if they can't afford an attorney, then one is assigned to them, which brings the unfair attack on attorneys, because Kevin can tell you whether he wants to defend them or not. When they give him an order that he has to defend them, he has to go. But here people are saying, oh, we are making money off criminals, and that's not how it is. $1,000, right, is all they want to pay for you to go do a criminal case. I'm talking about the legal aid through the Supreme Court. So that's an unfair statement. But let's go back to what it is. If you don't give the proper authorities the resources, then of course you can't get the conviction. You pass all the laws and you don't. So then you want to do a band-aid effect that damages everybody.
I'm trying to put into perspective what I hear to be your concerns. And one of the issues, because it's one that people understand the most, is the state of emergency is like a gill net. You're going to catch things that you're supposed to catch, but you're going to catch things that you're not supposed to catch as well. What I hear from you is that there are sufficient laws in place before the state of emergency that could have, where are we at, 65, 75 people detained? That 75. Could have gotten these 75 people off the streets if they are in fact gang associates or any of the
or better
things.
Yet, I only read one of the particulars because all of them have almost the same thing. Here, what's the second one? The second one says, because they know that you're specifically concerned with illegal possession of firearm and ammunition. Okay, you know what possession means? It means that they found you with it. So if you say the reason we are detaining you is because you have illegal possession of firearm and ammunition, you don't need the Constitution. You need to use the Firearm Act. That's an offense. So why will you lock up someone that you say have possession of illegal firearm and ammunition for 30 days and release them, when the right thing you should do is arrest them, charge them, put them through the legal system and convict them?
Let me understand this just a little bit further.
You can't be putting those things.
Could it be that the state of emergency allows for these 75 people to be detained while the evidence is gathered to be able to prosecute under the gang law?
No, that's not how it works. You see that? No. If you write, this is something signed by the Minister of National Security. If you're saying, because remember, after 7 days of detention, these people had to be given in writing the particulars why they're detained. When you give the particulars and you say something that you know that they have illegal possession of firearms, no. You already have that evidence. You can't write that. They didn't say, we suspect that you may have had. They said it clearly here, that you're specifically involved with, and they listed these things. The wording is very important. Possession of an item is an offense, an illegal item. You don't need to incarcerate them for 30 days. You need
You can proceed with charges.
Charge them and get them convicted and then lock them up with lawful evidence. You see, what I want people to understand, right, is not that these guys should not face the law, but they should face the law properly. When you just pick up somebody, how to me, I feel we just pick up and say, we think we're involved with gangs and lock you up, and there's no evidence. Or we think we have possession and gun and lock you up, and 30 days release you. It would be different if I say, oh, well, I know we have the evidence. You have possession of gun and you are involved with gang. We know when just lock you up. we can give you a charge sheet. You appear before a magistrate. If this is a matter that will go through the Supreme Court, we'll have the preliminary inquiry, then we'll have the court process, and then you'll be convicted, and then you will spend time in prison under the right process. Right now, they're spending time in prison. They can't be, under the Prison Act, they can't be called a remand prisoner, and they can't be called a convicted prisoner. So the poor head of prison now doesn't even know, never envisioned that, because there's no, and the only other time you could hold people without being convicted is if they're insane, and they're not insane. So the Prison Act, as it stands, doesn't have provision for people to just be detained.
Well, we saw that in our newscast last night. The CEO speaks of the
So
questions about what
this is
will
a
be
knee-jerk
allowed for
reaction.
and not allowed for while they are at the prison. Do they go in the remand section? Do they not go in the, are they allowed visitation? And this, I don't know if that is in the regulations, but
it's crazy. It wasn't
guys,
well thought out.
Guys, and that's where I wanted to jump in. I think we have to be fair as well. Because this is not a conversation, honestly, in my opinion, for everybody.
I know, that's part of the problem.
And so the conversation should be led by people who can rationally discuss the issues, which is a very difficult thing for our country. Let's just start by, would you concede that this is the first time that it has ever been done, and so there will be some errors made. There's no roadmap for Belize.
Okay, let me answer that one.
That's the first one. Let me give
no,
you three.
Give me them one by one, and I answer them one by one.
To get to it.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
So yes, I'll concede it's the first time that I know of since independence. But when it comes to your constitutional rights, there's no room for mistakes. We are dealing with people who are supposedly legal trained, not only legally trained, but have knowledge of the legal system, the police system, and matters on the street. This wasn't supposed to be a knee-jerk reaction. It should be something properly thought out, because you had to have known what Section 18 requires and what Section 19 requires. And when you want to do something and you want to be effective, you have to do it the right way. And like we said before, the first thing that should have been tried, and if it failed, then you go to that is the last resort, was this legislation passed in April. So April, May, June, July, August, September. So 4 months already, because we're not finished September when it was passed. 4 months, and you're saying in 4 months you've proven that this failed? That you couldn't convict people under a law that you made specifically to target gang activities and supposed gang members.
Okay.
So what's your second point?
The second question is, when you look at particulars and you do criminal defense work, particulars in a regular charge mean particulars. Are you satisfied that this is particulars? Because a particular in a regular charge sheet means on the 5th day of January, Audrey Matura assaulted Henry at such a place.
To wit, using a firearm or a machete.
Are you satisfied that what you have there is particulars and not a summary or a generalization?
Okay, good question. One, I am not satisfied that they are particulars because it doesn't go in details, but they are very blanket. And from the blanket nature, what I am saying, if you're saying the person has possession of illegal firearms and ammunition, then you should be able to give the further details, and that's why I'm saying you don't need to use the constitutional declaration. You need to use the act. You need to use the act that then requires that this person be treated as the accused and remanded and then prosecuted, because if you have the evidence that they have the gun on them, possession,
then go ahead and charge.
Then you have enough to charge. You know, you and I know that possession of firearm and ammunition is the hardest thing to beat when they actually find you in possession. All you, the attorney, could do is to make sure that there's a due process in the system for them. Nothing else.
My next question, and I have two more than I'm
No problem.
You were questioning why we have this Frankenstein of a legislation.
I never call it Frankenstein, but that's a good description.
Well, you say it's piecemeal. It's a piece of this, it's a piece of that, it's an abuse of that.
Yes.
And this legislation seems to insert the Minister of National Security in the place of the judiciary, in the place of the police, in the place of the prisons. There must be a good reason, and it is allowed by Section 18 that this state of emergency is allowed by Section 18. There must be some good from this.
Really?
Some good from this power being placed, and there must be a reason and circumstance where this is appropriate.
Where the minister replaces every arm of our system of governance.
But it's allowed for in the...
I know, but I don't think there's any good that come out from doing that. To me, the good that comes out is that it sparks a discourse, and then we can see the level at which our people need to make sure that they remain enlightened as to what our laws are and how our system works. Because part of the problem is people don't understand how the whole legislative process works. They don't understand the system under which we work. And so they make these wanton and crazy remarks, and you know, I accept where they are, but that's a failure on our part, even as attorneys, because we know better and we should enlighten people.
And it doesn't remove
But
from the
I
facts
don't
of the
think
situation.
I don't think in any circumstance any one person should encompass all the powers of all the three arms of government.
Yeah.
Never.
My final question is this, which is remedial. Section 18 and 19
Of the Constitution.
of the Constitution suspend the Bill of Rights in a sense. So when I mean suspend, you don't have a right to a fair trial, you don't have a right to due process, you don't have a right to liberty, you don't have a right to
your property, you don't have
you
a
don't
right
to be
freedom of movement,
not
association.
being discriminated against. You don't have that right.
You can be discriminated.
You can be discriminated against. And in this case, you're saying that you can be discriminated against by the minister. That's in essence what the regulations are saying. We've seen in other countries, in America, they have the Patriot Act, which allows for America to do this. So this is not necessarily, in theory, something novel.
Yeah.
But my question was a procedural one. In Jamaica, they also have similar provision, and they're seeing a slew of lawsuits against the government for different judicial review and for wrongful arrest and the like.
In Trinidad as well.
In Trinidad as well. And that comes at a significant cost. We saw where the same George Street got $100 and something thousand. If you multiply
for
it
the
by
abuse.
75. My final question is this. Law is very specific, as you were saying, and it's hard for common people to understand it. But when the proclamation was made, it enabled the government to do certain things. But it did not flesh it out.
Right.
What fleshes out is the
regulations that was made 3 days
so
later.
what happens to the people who arrested the day when it was proclaimed, when there were no regulations?
All of them should be released and rearrested after the regulations. And all the people who were taken up to Hattieville yesterday were all detained from the morning of the 5th. So by the time that press conference was held and revealed that there was such a proclamation, people were already incarcerated. As a matter of fact, a lot of the guys say that from the Saturday before the 1st of September, they were locked up for the 48 hours. And after the 48 hours, they were released. And when they were released the Monday, by the Wednesday morning, at between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., they were all rounded up and told nothing. They said like 3 to 4 truckloads of men came with masks on, so they can't even tell you who they are. Yeah. They said nothing to them. They didn't even know there was a state of emergency or anything. They just took them. The first time they knew that about all of this, because they haven't been seeing news on anything, was yesterday when some of them finally got to speak with an attorney. And that's how
So there could be some lawsuits.
There can be, but you see, that's to me,
against the government.
to me, exactly, but to me, the big picture which I want people to see is, 1, crime is a reality. 2, the way to deal with that is you have to deal with some social issues, but on the legal aspect, we need to properly gather evidence to arrest, charge, and convict these people. I am not saying they shouldn't be convicted. I am not saying they shouldn't be locked up. I just want them to be locked up with evidence so that when you put them for the 10 or 25 years that the law allows, as opposed to suspend everyone's constitutional right in that area, lock them up for 30 days, get what anger set will come out. Heaven knows how much worse it will get.
But Audrey, they said they did that because there was no crime control council.
So,
but
moving on from the
whose fault is it that there's no crime control
council?
council?
Time, there's one more issue I want to get to, because it is absolutely important, and it's part of what I think we need to honestly assess as a country. What is removed under the state of emergency is one thing, but what should be maintained is the humane treatment, and that is one of the areas that the human rights activists have been speaking about, and globally that is something that is expected, that people who are incarcerated for whatever reason should be treated with dignity as a human being. You have visited with the detained persons, and I want to ask you, do you feel that we have done sufficient, or we've made sufficient effort to ensure that no matter what the reason is, these people are being treated humanely?
No. as you walk in the police station yesterday at Queen Street, you could smell the stench. I am talking to these people, and their clothes, they stink. And here what some of them told me. Some of them said, Miss, when I came, I don't have a change of clothes, and I haven't taken a bath. Some of them says, every other day we get a bath. Or some of them say, I have had a bath, but it's the same clothes I have to keep on putting on. And he says, the problem is because the room is so small, and up to 35 of us in this little cell. Oh, and the minors are with the adults, by the way.
What?
They sleep on the cold floor. One of them had to be taken and treated for bronchitis. They sleep on the cold floor. The latrine in there is not working. So if they don't get to go, if they don't get to wake up the police to take them to the latrine, then they have to pee right there and poo right there. Some of them are pooing in plastic bags, they say. So you could smell the stench on them. So that is inhumane, even the amount of people you packed up in a room and the fact that you put minors in there. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, they stink.
But Audrey, these are the same people who are shooting babies and women and shooting up houses. These are terrorists and criminals.
I'm glad that these are.
No,
that's, well, then we have changed.
What about all the victims?
Well, two things. When the police fail to do their proper work to ensure conviction, to get justice for the victims, remember it's the state now that protects the rights of the victims. It's not me and you, the civilian. So it's the state against the criminal. The state has to protect the rights of the victims, and the way to do that and give justice to those victims is to ensure that you gather the evidence and put away these people for good. Not temporarily put them in a cell for 7 days, along shit and piss, and then think that that is punishment, because you're only creating people who will be worse. You have to do things the right way. Unless we are no longer a civilized society and we want to change the way things are done here, I have no problem. Please, somebody, prepare the petition and pass it around so that we change our legal system. But the people don't even understand the legal system we operate on to even start discussion of changing it.
I want to give you one closing
But that's
point.
not my fault. Wait, I want to say this. They put the onus on me as though it's my duty to educate. I am not the state. I'm an individual targeted by the state. It's the state that needs to educate our people and have the programs in our schools, on television or whatever. They don't want to do that. It's not my job to educate the people. I will participate. I do not have the resources. I don't get paid to come on this show and go to police here. I don't get paid. But I do it because I was once a victim of the system. I know what it is to be arrested and charged and taken in and out of the police station for political reasons. So I know what it is to be on the other end of it. And I'm glad none of them paid my education, because none of them would say, well, remember, pay for yourself, you can't talk. I will talk out, and I will demand, and I will continue to demand, that constitutional law be taught in every school, from primary level up. We have failed our people. So now when they have the discussion, I and them cannot have the same level of discussion because they don't even know the system. So I have to start from the scratch. They tell them, but that's not my obligation. So let's not take the onus off the state. The state protects the rights of the victims. And they have failed the victims. And because they have failed the victims, they have switched the script and say, oh, these are the bad guys. Okay, if you know these are the bad guys, please convict them. Convict them so that we incarcerate them. But right now, that's not what they're doing.
I think that's the best closing point for this conversation. There's so much more we want to get into, but
yes,
we are out of time.
And you must know, the regulation says there's a curfew. Has the government announced that there's a curfew since Friday? It's right here. It's right here. I know. I know the one, but people need to know.
I know,
Section 19 gives you a curfew against minors. Okay?
So we will, of course, follow up on this conversation. Audrey, we thank you so much for coming in and sharing this legal perspective, and we appreciate your passion for what you do as well. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be shifting gears, talking to the BTIA about the West Fest coming up. Stay tuned.